What is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words that contains at least one subject and one predicate. The sentence by itself should make complete sense. Now, what is a subject in a sentence? The subject is the person or the object the sentence is talking about. So, it is the what or whom in the sentence. While the predicate talks about the subject, it gives us more information about the subject in the sentence. For example, a good businessman maintains good relations with his customer. So who is the subject in the sentence? Businessman is the subject. And what is the predicate talking about? It's giving more information about the businessman, saying that he maintains good relations with his customer. This is a sentence. It contains a subject as well as a predicate. A few more examples wherein the subject may be absent, but it is indirectly implied. When you say thank you, you're trying to say, I thank you for your help, for the gift, for whatever it is. When you're trying to thank a person, you simply say thank you, but you're implying that you are thanking that person. The subject is absent, but it is implied. When you say shocking, you're trying to say it is shocking indirectly, wherein the subject is it, the instant you are talking about. Hence, sentence contains at least one subject and one predicate, and by itself it has to make complete sense. Let's understand the different types of sentences. There are 4 different types of sentences. A simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence. Further, a compound complex sentence. It's a combination of a compound sentence as well as a complex sentence. What is a simple sentence? A sentence by itself, when it contains a subject and a verb, it is called a simple sentence. Mostly simple sentences are short in their nature. They can be longer ones as well, but mostly because it's just a subject and a verb that is present in a sentence, these are mostly short sentences. And they make complete sense. Hence, it's a complete thought and they can stand on its own. That means it does not need another added sentence to give meaning to the sentence. It by itself makes complete sense. Hence, these are simple sentences. Simple sentences contain one finite verb. What are finite verbs? Finite verbs are a form of verb that can function as the root of an independent clause. It by itself shows the action. It does not need further verb or further action to indicate or talk more about the verb. Simply, he goes. He is the subject, goes is the verb. I ran, right? I is the subject, ran is the verb. It's the finite verb. Simple sentences have one main clause and it is important. What are clauses? Clauses are the smallest grammatical unit that can express a complete proposition. They also by definition contain a subject and a verb. And it's the smallest sentence that can make complete sentences. I met him. I met him before, right? These are clauses. Clauses are also called as main clauses or independent clauses because they again make complete sense all by themselves. You don't need further extension to talk about the clause. Simply you say, I eat bananas. I is the subject, eat is the verb, right? It is a simple sentence. I eat bananas. A simple sentence can also be referred to as an independent clause. It is referred to as independent because although it may be a part of a compound or a complex sentence, it can stand by itself, right? A simple sentence can stand by itself. It's also called a independent clause. When you have to write sentences and you are using too many simple sentences, I woke up, I had bath, I ate breakfast, I went to school. It can be very noisy, it can be very choppy. You have too many sentences and there is no proper flow, right? Hence, never use simple sentences. It can be very confusing. It cannot sometimes make complete sense. That is the reason you have different types of sentences called compound complex or compound complex sentences. These further add to the simple sentences to make it more understandable. Let's look at a few examples of simple sentences. John waited for the train. Now, who is the subject in the sentence here? John is the subject. What did he do? What was the action? He was waiting. So, that is the verb. It's a simple sentence. The train was late. What is the subject here? Train. And what happened to the train? It was late. That was the action, verb. So it was late. Mary and Samantha took the bus. Here, Mary and Samantha, there are two different subjects. Hence, compound is something more than one. So when you have more than one subject, you have compound subjects. What did they do? They took the bus. So, took is the verb. I looked for Mary and Samantha at the bus station. You are the subject because you are the one who is talking. So, you say I is the subject. I looked for Mary and Samantha. What were you doing? You were looking for them. That is the verb. Another example. Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station early but waited until noon for the bus. Again, these are subjects, compound subjects. What did they do? They arrived and then they waited. It's a compound verb. It's a different, right? When you use simply one verb or one subject, they are your simple sentences. But when you have more than one, they become your compound subjects or your compound verbs. What is a compound sentence? We've just learned that anything is called a compound if it is more than one. So in that case, if you have more than one simple sentences, when you join those two sentences, it becomes a compound sentence, as simple as it. So a compound sentence contains two simple sentences. And what else did we learn? We've learned that simple sentences are also called independent clauses because clauses by themselves make complete sense. Compound sentences are made of two or more coordinate clauses joined with a conjunction, coordinating conjunction. Conjunctions are those parts of speech that help join two or more sentences, right? So what are the coordinating conjunctions? For, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. These are all your coordinating conjunctions. For you to easily remember the first letter of each of the coordinating conjunction. It turns to be fanboys. You can remember that way to try to recollect the remaining coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions indicate a type of relationship between two clauses because you have two clauses, you are using a coordinating conjunction. You're using a word to connect these two sentences, right? Hence, this word, it indicates the relationship between these two sentences, right? And in cases, they need not also. They can indicate or they may not indicate much of the relationship between two sentences, especially the coordinating conjunction A and D, and it only adds as one independent clause to another, but it does not give a relationship between both the sentences. It's only connecting two sentences that are logically related. Let's look at a few examples of compound sentences. Joey waited for the train, but the train was late. So what are the two sentences if you forget the coordinative conjunction? You're saying Joey waited for the train. The train was late. But here what happened? He was waiting because the train was late. So you're saying Joey waited for the train, but the train was late. I looked for Mary and Samantha at the bus station, but they arrived at the station before noon and left on the bus before I arrived. Even before you went to the station, Mary and Samantha, they came, they took the bus and they left. So here your coordinating conjunction is but. Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station before noon and they left on the bus before I arrived. These are two different statements. Hence you're connecting it with and. But here what happened? Even before you went, they came, they arrived at the station, they took the bus and they left. Right? But here he's not talking about them arriving at the station. These are two different statements. You can simply say Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station and they left. So what are you trying to say? What is the other statement by itself? Mary and Samantha left on the bus before I arrived. So those two statements you are joining it with and. Mary and Samantha left on the bus before I arrived. So I did not see them. Look at the three different coordinative conjunctions. All these three coordinating conjunctions imply different meaning. Because they left before you came, you couldn't see them. So you're saying, so I did not see them. Here you are saying, they came and they took the bus even before you went to the station. Here what are you saying? Even though they came early to the station, before you came, they left before you arrived. So these three coordinative conjunctions are different, implying different meaning for each sentence. Hence, according to the sentence, you have to use the coordinating conjunction for a more appropriate usage. What are complex sentences? A complex sentence is an independent clause joined by one or more dependent clause. So basically a simple sentence has a dependent clause that by itself is sufficient. For a compound sentence, you need two or more simple sentences or two or more independent clauses. Them by themselves will make complete sense. But for a complex sentence, you need at least one dependent clause joined by two or more dependent clauses. What is a dependent clause? A dependent clause is a clause that does not make complete sense by itself. It needs an independent clause to further give more meaning to itself, which is the dependent clause. Simple examples of dependent clause after they left on the bus, right? While he waited at the train station. You don't have a complete picture of what was happening when you are saying these sentences. But when added to an independent clause, it will give even more sense. It will make the understanding would be even more when you join a dependent clause to a independent clause. Always remember that dependent clauses begin with subordinating conjunctions they're also called subordinators. So what are these? As, because, since, after, although, when, and so on. Right? And a complex sentence will always have a subordinator. Why is that? Because a complex sentence should have one or more dependent clause, right? So a complex sentence should have a dependent clause, one or more than it, and a dependent clause always begins with a subordinative conjunction. So what are you saying? A complex sentences always must have a subordinating conjunction. Or a relative pronoun. What are pronouns? Pronouns are those that talk about the noun, right? indirect usage. Who, that, which, etc. So in a complex sentence, you have an independent clause which is joined by one or more dependent clause. Hence, you can start the sentence by writing the independent clause first, followed by the dependent clause first. But when you have a dependent clause and the sentence begins with it and ends with an independent clause, it's called a periodic sentence. Here's an example. While he waited at the train station, Joey realized the train was late. For a moment, forget this sentence and just look at this. What are you saying? Joey realized that the train was late. It's making sense by itself, right? Joey understood that the train was late. It is an independent clause. But what is the dependent clause here? You are saying while he waited at the train station. This is your dependent clause. Since the sentence begins with a dependent clause first and then ends with an independent clause, it's called a periodic sentence. A few examples of complex sentences. After eating lunch at the restaurant, Mark went to the gym to exercise. So forget this statement for a while. And when you look at just this, what is it saying? Mark went to the gym to exercise. You don't need this action to understand this sentence. It by itself makes complete sense. Hence, it is the independent clause. Now this, after eating lunch at the restaurant, is the dependent clause. This is the dependent clause. This is the independent clause. So you need a dependent clause. Further, you need an independent clause to the dependent clause to make sense. As he was tired, he went to bed. Just look at the sentence. He went to bed makes complete sense. The action is complete. That is the independent clause. But what is the dependent clause here? Because he was tired. As he was tired, he went to bed. When the boy saw the wolf, he ran away. He ran away. That makes complete sense. That is the independent clause. And your dependent clause, when the boy saw the wolf, he ran away. So we've learned simple, we've learned compound, we've learned complex. Now let's understand what happens or what do you mean by a compound complex sentence. So what do we know? We know that a compound sentence is a sentence that is made up of two simple sentences and it is joined by a conjunction. What do we know about a complex sentence? It is made of a simple statement, right? Simple sentence. It must have one independent clause followed by two or more dependent clauses, right? Hence, that is a complex sentence. So, what would your compound complex sentence be? It is made up of more than one sentence joined by a conjunction. So, this part is the compound part. And then at least one of those sentences is complex. That means it has to have two independent clauses and at least one dependent clauses. Why two dependent clauses? Why two independent clauses? One independent clause from the compound part, one independent clause from the complex part of the sentence. And then you should have at least minimum one dependent clause. Because compound complex sentences are normally longer than other sentences, it is important to punctuate them correctly. If you don't put the full stops where needed or a comma or whatever punctuation necessary, the sentence will not make complete sense. You will not be able to understand it, right? Hence, punctuation in a compound complex sentence is important, very necessary. A few examples. I will get to watch the television, but first I have to clean up the room after we finish eating, right? I will get to watch television, right? That's one independent. I have to clean up the room, another independent clause. But what are these both? And here but is your conjunction. But what is happening for these both? The dependent clause is after you finish eating. This action will happen only after you finish eating. So after we finish eating is your dependent clause. The sun is shining through the clouds. So I think we can go swimming, right? So this is another compound complex sentence. Beginning sentences with and. Let's learn to understand if you can or whether you should or you shouldn't begin a sentence with either and or but or any of the other coordinating conjunctions. Simply, you cannot. You can never begin a sentence with either and or but. Because why is that you cannot begin with any other coordinative conjunctions? Why is that so? Because these words are only used to join together parts of a sentences. You cannot begin a sentences. They only help you to join two or more sentences. Hence, you can never begin a sentence with a coordinating conjunction and or but. However, such sentences can be used effectively because sentences beginning with these words, they stand out. They're sometimes used for emphasis. If you use sentences beginning with one of the coordinative conjunctions, you should use these sentences sparingly and carefully. Very rare cases, especially if you want to put more emphasis on the sentence, that is when you can, but very rarely, very limitedly you should use. For example, you can say, I thought you were coming home. And the answer could be, but I had another extra class. That's the reason I couldn't come home early, right? So the mother is saying, I thought you would be coming home early. And the mother's child is responding, but I had another extra class. That's the reason I couldn't come home early. When you're beginning sentences with because, we're mostly told that we're not supposed to begin sentences with the word because, since it is wrong. But let's look at an example of compound complex sentence. So your sentence here is, I will get to watch television, but first I have to clean up the room after we finish eating. What are your two independent clauses here? I will get to watch television. The other one is I have to clean up the room. Conjunction is but. And your independent clause is after we finish eating. So you can do both of these actions only after we finish eating. Let's try and construct a compound complex sentence. So a compound complex sentence should have two independent clauses. So my first independent clause would be the team captain jumped with joy. That's my first independent clause. Second one, I will say the fans cheered. So, right, these both are your two independent clauses and they make complete sense by themselves. So what do we need now? We need a dependent clause for them to be combined and to form a compound complex sentence, right? So what are we trying to do before that? Let's combine the both independent clauses. So what we can say the team captain jumped with joy and the fans cheered, right? It makes sense? The team captain jumped with joy and the fans cheered. So we finished the first task of combining both the independent clauses. Now we need a dependent clause for it to become a compound complex sentence. So what we can do? We can say the team captain jumped with joy and the fans cheered because we won the tournament. So we won the tournament, right? The statement is the team captain jumped with joy and the fans cheered because we won the tournament. Let's look at sentences, whether if they can begin with the coordinating conjunction and or but. Simply no, you cannot begin sentences. You are not supposed to begin sentences with and or but. You have to avoid doing that because these coordinating conjunctions only help to join together parts of sentences or two or more sentences. But in cases for you to make more emphasis or to create more impact on the statement, in that cases you may begin, right? But do so with very little usage. You should use those sentences very sparingly and carefully. For example, your mother is expected that you'd come back home from school early. So she'd say, I'd expected you to come home early. You can say, but mother, I had another extra class. So there you're trying to put emphasis that you had an extra class. That's why you couldn't come home early, right? So in cases like that, you may use the coordinating conjunction, but use so very sparingly, very less. Beginning sentences with because. Again, we are told not to begin sentences with because, but there is nothing wrong with doing so because it helps. Again, because is a coordinating conjunction and it helps join two or more sentences, right? So to avoid sentence fragments, something like because Mary and Samantha arrived at the bus station before noon. It is a sentence fragment, but it is perfectly acceptable to begin with the sentence because as long as the sentence is complete, as long as it makes sentence. Because they arrived at the bus station before noon, I did not see them at the station. This entire statement makes sense. It is complete. In that cases, you can use the coordinating conjunction because. In cases where it does not make complete sense and it is becoming a dependent clause, you shouldn't use by starting the statement with a coordinating conjunction. Let's learn how to construct sentences. Making a simple sentence. So what should a simple sentence contain? It should contain a finite verb. And what is a finite verb? It is a verb that has a subject and it can function as the independent clause. If it contains one finite verb, the other finite verbs in the question can be deleted or substituted. They can be changed. You can substitute them with a participle, infinite gerund, a noun or a adjective or a adverb. Let's look at the table. You have sentences that are similar or that are time related. So for that, what are the options you have? You have the ing option, the gerund option, or you can add an adjective, adverb, or a noun or a phrase. So you have two different sentences. Mother woke up early. She went for a walk. You have to convert these two statements into one simple sentences. How will you do that? You can change it into on waking up early, mother went for a walk. So if you look at it, mother went for a walk by itself makes sense. It's an independent clause. On waking up early, that is the dependent clause. Hence, it's become a simple statement. You're saying, on waking up early, my mother went for a walk. Rohan is my brother and he is very naughty. What will you say? Rohan, my brother, is very naughty. Students who worked hard will surely succeed. You can say hardworking students will surely succeed. They escaped the fire. It was amazing. You can say amazingly they escaped the fire. That's how you can join these two sentences to make them one simple sentence. In cases that are opposite in nature or if they provide contrast ideas, you can add the ing form of the word to in spite. Although he is very thin, he is strong. So these are both opposite. He is thin, again he is strong. Usually thin people are not strong, right? So if it is like that in the case, what you can say, in spite of being very thin, he is strong. In cases if it's a condition or you're providing alternate ideas, you can add without and the verb should be in the ing form or but for the ing form. You can say you saved her or she would have drowned. What are you trying to say? Because you saved her, she is alive. Otherwise, she would have drowned in that water. So your answer would become, without you saving her, she would have drowned. For reasons, it can be directly an ing form, by and the ing form, to or and you add a verb to. Since they were late, they missed the bus. Being late, the verbs become in the ing form. Being late, they missed the bus. They played well, they won the match. By playing well, they won the match. These are all reasoning. Because they played well, they won. Otherwise, they would have lost, right? So you're trying to say, by playing well, they won the match. He wanted to pass the examination. He worked hard. He worked hard to pass the examination. So these are all different types of sentences and how you can convert them into simple sentences. Let's look at another few solved examples, how we can make them into a simple sentence. Your two different sentences are, I kicked the ball. It hit Tom. Say, the ball I kicked hit Tom. That night, Karan had a dream. It was more like a nightmare. That night, Karan had a dream like a nightmare. How to make compound sentences. You're supposed to have two sentences or two coordinate clauses and join them by a coordinator. So let's look at different types of sentence. The first is a similar time related idea. So your coordinators for them are and as well, not only but also. Example, they were tired and they were hungry. So this is your coordinating conjunction. Two statements are, they were tired, they were hungry. You're saying they were tired and they were hungry. For opposite or contrasting ideas, your coordinators are but, yet, however, and still. She exercised regularly, but she lost no weight. For conditions or alternative ideas, you can use or, either or neither or. Either bring the book tomorrow or you will have to pay a fine. For reasons or relative ideas, you're trying to use so, for, therefore. The boy was very hungry, so he ate too much. When you're trying to convert, synthesis is when you are trying to convert and you're only using a coordinator. It was a stormy night. We ventured out. It was a stormy night, yet we ventured out. These are two simple statements to turn into compound. You would say, it was a stormy night, yet we ventured out. What do you mean by venture? To go out. They saw a lion. They saw an elephant. They not only saw a lion but also saw an elephant. So this is how you would synthesize them. That is, add two sentences to make them into one sentence. So this is how you convert simple sentences to a compound. How do you convert complex to a compound? You have to remove the subordinator and use a coordinator. Although they lost the match, they enjoyed playing. Here, although is the subordinator. So what are you trying to say? You're trying to say they lost the match, but they enjoyed playing. That's the but is the coordinator. So this is how you convert a complex sentence to a compound sentence. Since they played well, they won the match. They played the match, so they won. They played well, so they won the match. How to convert simple to a compound sentence? You have to add another finite verb and use a coordinator. Being an expert orator, he gave an excellent speech. He was an expert orator, so he gave an excellent speech. In spite of being naughty, he was sincere. He was naughty, but he was sincere. Few more examples to make them into compound sentences. I received your kind letter. I thank you for it. What are you doing? You're trying to add a coordinator. I received your letter. I received your kind letter and I thank you for it. Mother was tired. She announced her intention of going to bed. Mother was tired, so she announced her intention of going to bed. Breathing exercises must be prescribed. They must be carried out under a doctor's guidance. Breathing exercises must be prescribed and carried out under a doctor's guidance. The journey was very long. I was afraid to take it. You will say the journey was very long, so I was afraid to take it. How do you make complex sentence? By starting the subordinate clause with a subordinator. Let's look at subordinators for different types of sentences. For a sentence that has a similar or a time-related idea, use the following subordinators: when, which, where, that, and how. Example: when she reached home, she went to sleep. She went to France where she learned French. Fiona knows that she can sing. Nobody knows how they managed. These are all your subordinators. For the kind of a sentence that has an opposite or a contrast idea, you will say though, although, even though, even if. You will say though they were tired, they continued to work. For conditions or alternate ideas, if or unless. If you know the answer, do not reveal it. For reasons or elative ideas, as, since, because, so that, or so and then that. As she was hungry, she ate her meal. He walked quickly so that he could reach in time. What do you mean by elative ideas? Elative means something has happened, therefore the hence part of it. It means, it means the therefore ideas. Because something happened, you would say therefore so and so, right? That is what elative ideas mean. Okay, for different types of conversions. You have cheated me. I shall never forget you. So what are you trying to say? You are combining these two sentences, right? Different sentences. So you're saying, I shall never forget that you have cheated me. She saw a man. His face was lopsided. Lopsided means disfigured. Something has happened. Maybe that person met with an accident. She saw a man whose face was lopsided. So these are ways to convert two sentences to become one single sentence. You are synthesizing them. To change compound to a complex sentence, the other way around. Initially, for complex to compound, we removed the subordinator and ordered a coordinator. For a compound to complex, you remove the coordinator and add a subordinator. It was very cold outside, yet the old lady came out of the house. You'll say, though it was cold outside, the old lady came out of the house. You must start your studies now, or you may not score well. If you do not start your studies now, you may not score well. To convert a simple to a complex sentence, add another finite verb and use a subordinator. Seeing the child drowning, he rushed towards it. When he saw the child drowning, he rushed towards it. Encouraged by Meenakshi Pahuja, she took to swimming. Since she was encouraged by Meenakshi Pahuja, she took to swimming. Took to means to take up classes, to start learning swimming. In cases of time, for simple, you can use ing, on with the ing verb form, after with the verb ing form, while and with the verb in the ing form. Seeing his wife, he ran. For a compound, and. He saw his wife and ran. How to make it a complex? All the WH words. When he saw his wife, he ran. In terms of reason, ing, be, by plus verb in the ing form, or to plus verb. Being hungry, he ate lunch. Compound, he was hungry, so he ate lunch. These are coordinators. For complex, subordinators. As, since, because, so that, so and that. He ate lunch because he was hungry. For contrasting conditions, in spite of plus the verb should be in your ing form. In spite of playing well, he lost the match. He played well, but he lost the match. Though he played well, he lost the match. This is the complex sentence. For cases for sentences that are based on conditions, without plus your verb in the ing form. Without working hard, you will fail. Work hard or you will fail. Unless you work hard, you will fail. You can also say, if you don't work hard, you will fail. So these are different ways to construct simple, compound and complex sentences. Let's look at a few more examples how to make complex sentences. I finished the dishes. I went out. When I finished the dishes, I went out. A man did his job. A man did this. He must have been very strong. The man who did this must have been strong. I breathe all right. At least I think so. I think that I breathe all right. I won, managing to shock everybody. When I won, I managed to shock everybody. That night, Karan had a dream, and it was more like a nightmare. That night, Karan had a dream, which was more like a nightmare. The very same sentence we used to convert it into a complex sentences. What did we try to say? I'm sorry, not complex, simple sentence. What did you try to say? That night, Karan had a dream like a nightmare. It is very simply constructed. To make that a complex sentence, we added a subordinator. That night, Karan had a dream which was more like a nightmare. So this concludes the topic simple, compound, complex and compound complex sentences.